Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my FXmovies.20 channel? Thank you so much. I never imagined I would be telling this story, confessing the things I once tried to push away, bury deep inside me, and pretend never happened. But here I am, unable to escape my own thoughts, forced to confront the choices I made. My name is Evelyn, and I have been married to Daniel for 12 years. To the outside world, we had a picture-perfect life, a beautiful home, 2 wonderful children, and a marriage that seemed stable. But pictures don't always show the truth, do they? Daniel and I were happy once. We fell in love in college, built a life together, and for a long time, I believed that was enough. We had our struggles like any couple, but we always found our way back to each other, or at least that's what I thought. Looking back now, I can see when things started to change, but at the time, I was too caught up in the routine of life to notice. Somewhere along the way, we stopped being husband and wife in the way that truly mattered. We became partners in running a household, co-parents raising children, but the intimacy, the connection, the love that once held us together started to fade. Our conversations were mostly about responsibilities, bills, school schedules, grocery lists. We sat across from each other at dinner but barely spoke beyond what was necessary. I told myself this was normal, that marriage evolves, that passion is something that fades with time. But deep inside, I felt lonely, not the kind of loneliness that comes from being physically alone, but the kind that comes from lying beside someone every night and feeling like a stranger. I told myself it was just a phase, that maybe I was expecting too much. Then Nathan came back into my life. He was an old friend from college, someone I had lost touch with over the years. It started with a simple message on social media. "Hey, it's been a long time." That led to hours of catching up. He had never married, spent his life traveling and pursuing photography, and seemed genuinely happy with his choices. His life was the opposite of mine, spontaneous, free, untethered. At first, our conversations were harmless. We talked about old memories, shared stories about where life had taken us. But as the days passed, our messages became more frequent. I found myself waiting for his name to pop up on my screen, smiling when it did. I justified it in my head, it was just talking. There was nothing wrong with reconnecting with an old friend, right? But deep down, I knew. I knew because for the first time in years, I felt seen, heard, like I was more than just a wife and a mother, like I was Evelyn again. Then Nathan told me he was coming to town for a photography project and asked if I wanted to meet for coffee. My heart raced as I read his message. I hesitated, but before I could, I told myself I said yes. I told Daniel about it casually that evening, mentioning that I was meeting an old friend. He barely looked up from his phone, just nodded and said, "That's nice." That was it. No questions, no interest, nothing. And in that moment, something inside me cracked. The day I met Nathan, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, excitement. As soon as I saw him sitting at the cafe, smiling at me like no time had passed, I felt a warmth I couldn't explain. We talked for hours, reminiscing about the past, laughing about the silly things we used to do. He asked about my life, my dreams, if I was happy. That question, was I happy? I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. I realized I didn't know anymore. I had spent so long going through the motions of life that I never stopped to ask myself if I was truly happy. One coffee meeting turned into another, then another. Before I knew it, we were meeting regularly, talking almost every day. I told myself it was still just friendship, that I wasn't doing anything wrong. But every time I left our meetings, I felt lighter, and every time I returned home, I felt the weight of my reality settle back onto my shoulders. Daniel started to notice a change in me. One evening, as we sat in the living room, him on his laptop, me scrolling through my phone, he looked up and said, "You seem happier lately." I froze for a second, then forced a smile. "Just been focusing on myself more," I said, hoping that would be enough. He nodded and went back to his work. That was the moment I realized just how distant we had become. How easy it was to hide things from him because he wasn't really paying attention. One evening, Nathan invited me to see. I told him as I looked at one of his photographs. He smiled. "Maybe that's why I always saw you differently too." I turned to him, and in that moment, there was an unspoken understanding between us, a line we were dangerously close to crossing. "You deserve to be happy, Evelyn," he said softly. Those words echoed in my mind long after I left that night. As I lay beside my husband, staring at the ceiling, I asked myself a question I had been avoiding for months. Did I love Daniel anymore, or had we just become 2 people sharing a life out of habit? I didn't know the answer, and that terrified me more than anything. I wish I could say that after that night, I made the right decision, that I stepped away before things went too far. But the truth is I didn't. I let myself get drawn deeper into something I should have stopped the moment I felt it beginning. After that evening at Nathan's studio, something inside me changed. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't lie to myself and say that what I felt was just friendship. It hadn't been for a long time. I told myself I would stop, that I would create distance, that I wouldn't respond the next time he messaged. But the moment I saw his name pop up on my screen, I couldn't help myself. It was like he had become a part of my day, a part of me. We started meeting more often. Coffee turned into long walks in the park, lunch meetings that stretched for hours. Every time I was with him, I felt alive. I laughed. I shared things I hadn't said out loud in years. He listened. He understood me in a way Daniel hadn't in a long time. The more I spent time with Nathan, the harder it became to ignore the growing distance between me and my husband. Daniel didn't notice at first, or maybe he did, but he was too distracted with work and life to say anything. I was home every night. I took care of the kids. I did everything I was supposed to do, but my mind was somewhere else, with someone else. Then one evening, something happened that I wasn't prepared for. I was in the kitchen making dinner when Daniel walked in and leaned against the counter, watching me. "You've been different lately," he said. Suddenly, I froze for a moment, my heart pounding. "Different? How?" He shrugged. "I don't know, happier I guess, but also distant." I forced a smile and turned back to chopping vegetables. "I've just been trying to focus on myself more, taking time to do things that make me happy." He nodded slowly, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. "Are you seeing someone?" The knife in my hand slipped, nearly cutting my finger. I turned to him, my heart racing. "What?" "I don't mean," he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm not accusing you of anything, Evelyn. It's just you've been acting different. I don't know how to explain it. It's like you're here, but not really here." For a split second, I thought about telling him the truth about everything, about how lonely I had felt, how invisible I had become in our marriage, how much I had needed someone to see me. But instead, I shook my head and forced a small laugh. "Of course not, Daniel. That's ridiculous." He studied me for a long moment before nodding. "Okay," he said simply, then walked away. But the doubt in his eyes stayed with me. I should have taken it as a warning, a sign that I was standing on dangerous ground, that I needed to stop before everything fell apart. But I didn't. Instead, I let myself fall deeper. Nathan became my escape. Every time I was with him, I forgot about the guilt, about the life waiting for me at home. I convinced myself that what I was doing wasn't wrong, that as long as I didn't cross a certain line, it wasn't really betrayal. But deep down, I knew better. One afternoon, we met at a quiet park outside the city. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over everything. We sat on a bench, talking about nothing and everything. "You deserve to be happy," Nathan said again, just like he had that night at the studio. I looked at him, my chest tightening. I don't know what happiness even means anymore. He reached over, gently placing his hand over mine. "Then maybe it's time to figure it out." I should have pulled away. I should have walked away right then and there. But I didn't, because for the first time in a long time, I felt something. I had lost, and I wasn't ready to let it go. That night when I returned home, Daniel was waiting for me. He was sitting at the kitchen table, his hands clasped together, a look in his eyes I couldn't quite read. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. I swallowed, forcing my expression to remain neutral. "I was out, just needed some air." His gaze didn't waver. "You've been going out a lot lately." I let out a small nervous laugh. "Since when do I need permission to leave the house?" "It's not about permission, Evelyn," he leaned forward, his voice quieter now. "It's about honesty." A lump formed in my throat. "What are you saying, Daniel?" He exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "I know something's going on. I don't know what it is exactly, but I can feel it. You're different. We're different." I looked away, unable to hold his gaze. "Is there someone else?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, I considered telling him everything, laying it all out in the open, but I couldn't. Instead, I shook my head. "No," I said, my voice steady. "There's no one else." He studied me for a long time before nodding slowly. "Okay," he said again, but this time I knew he didn't believe me. And the worst part? I didn't blame him. The guilt started to consume me. It crept into my thoughts at night, filled the spaces between my laughter with Nathan, and made every moment at home feel heavier. I knew I was walking on dangerous ground, that I was risking everything, but I couldn't seem to stop. Nathan had become a part of me in a way I never expected. He made me feel alive, understood, and seen. But what I hadn't realized was that with every moment I spent with him, I was losing a part of myself, the part that had once loved Daniel, the part that had built a life with him. Daniel's suspicion grew. He wasn't confrontational, but I could see it in the way he watched me, in the way he asked casual questions that weren't really casual. Where were you? Who were you with? Are you happy? I kept lying. I kept telling myself that I wasn't really doing anything wrong, but deep down I knew I was. I wasn't just lying to Daniel, I was lying to myself. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late, and I had just returned home from meeting Nathan. As I stepped inside, I felt a tension in the air that made my stomach twist. Daniel was sitting in the living room, his phone in his hand, his expression unreadable. "Sit down," he said. I hesitated. "Daniel, I'm tired." "Sit down." His tone was firm, not angry, but something else, something that made my heart race. I slowly walked over and sat across from him. My hands felt cold. He took a deep breath, looking down at his phone before meeting my gaze. "I know." I felt the ground shift beneath me. "No," I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady. He exhaled, shaking his head. "Evelyn, don't do that. Don't lie to me." Silence filled the space between us. My throat felt tight. "How long?" he asked. I looked away, unable to hold his gaze. "Daniel, how long?" "Evelyn," his voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, a quiet pain that cut deeper than if he had yelled. Tears burned behind my eyes. I never meant for it to happen. "That doesn't answer my question," I swallowed hard. "A few months." He let out a short, humorless laugh, rubbing his hands over his face. "A few months," he repeated, as if saying it out loud would help him process it. "Daniel, did you ever plan to tell me?" He interrupted. I opened my mouth, then closed it because the truth was I didn't know. I had convinced myself that as long as I didn't cross a certain line, I wasn't really betraying him. But I had crossed that line a long time ago. "I don't know," I admitted. He nodded as if he had expected that answer. "Do you love him?" The question hit me like a punch to the chest. I had asked myself that before, but I had always avoided answering because the truth scared me. "I don't know," I whispered. Daniel stared at me for a long moment before nodding slowly. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, he stood up. "I don't think I can do this, Evelyn." His voice was quiet but firm. Panic shot through me. "Daniel, please no." He held up a hand. "I don't hate you. I don't even think I'm angry. I can't pretend this didn't happen." He exhaled, looking at me with an exhaustion I had never seen before. "I deserve better than this, and honestly, so do you." Tears slipped down my cheeks. "I never stopped loving you," I said, my voice breaking. He gave me a sad smile. "Maybe not, but you stopped choosing me." And just like that, I realized I had already lost him. There was no yelling, no dramatic ending, just the quiet truth settling between us. Our marriage was over, and it was my fault.